Alright, 1999 Mazda 626 2.0 liter 5-speed. So I'll start off. I was putting the XTD stage 2 clutch in my transmission. My clutch was slipping, and as you can see back here, I noticed that my car is full of concrete. You can see it all up, and that's after I chiseled it out. You couldn't even see the lines coming off of my steering mechanism, whatever it is. You can see the concrete I chipped out of the bottom of my car off all these pieces. This video is a tutorial on changing your lower control arm. As you know, with the Mazdas, you cannot press a ball bearing into the control arm. You have to buy the whole control arm assembly. Okay, so basically what I did, I had a lot of problem because mine is covered in concrete. As you can see back there, there's a ton of concrete. I don't know how good this is going to come out. What I had to do, basically, my bolt here, my nut here, was held in with some small little cheesy tabs from Mazda. Of course, with concrete all on my bolt threads, the nut turned with the bolt after I put a little bit of torque on it. So what I ended up having to do, there's my new control arm, my tie rod in. And be careful when you buy them from from eBay. This is the one they sent me with a locking nut on it. I don't really care for that design. I like my old ones better. This design with the pin on it. But anyway, if you have a problem with the bolt turning and turning and turning on your car and it will not come off for anything, it's not that bad. You just grab your trusty old grinder. That's a 4-inch, and you're gonna have to cut this part off where it sits just like this. It sits just like that. Once it sits like this, then you have access. As you can see, your control arm's no longer here, so you have access to knock these little pins loose. Now what I use to knock these pins loose is this little punch tool and a hammer. I just wedged it and it broke, but I just wedged it in between the bolt and the pin just like so, hammered it in there, and what that did, it forced the tab to go outward. Then I took a screwdriver and I hit it this way to push the tab back towards the subframe, as you can see in there, to get it off the nut. This is of course after I cut the head off the bolt. Okay, turn as many turns as you can until those tabs break free. That way you can get enough gap in here to be able to fit your side grinder to cut the head off without doing what I did and chewing up this piece on this side. That's why it's painted red. I had to repaint it and all I had was red. This is what your control arm will look like after you cut it. You're going to cut that whole section off. Okay? Cut all this off. As you can see, mine is full of concrete. And it weighs probably a pound to a pound and a half more than my new ones. So basically, what you're going to have to do, and as you can see, I had to drop my transmission, so my CV axle's out, everything's off the car. Also, right here, your sway bar linkage. You're going to need a 5 Allen wrench and a 14mm box end wrench to get these off. You're going to have to put your Allen wrench in the end to hold it still, and then your 14 to turn the nut. Doesn't mean nerd. Basically what I did, everything was already undone except for my sway bar inlay. All I did was unbolted that, flipped it over, pushed down as much as I could on my lower control arm so I could cut. Once I was done cutting, I actually got under here, and I took them bolts out. Once I took the bolts out, my lower control arm dropped to the ground. Once my lower control arm was dropped to the ground, then I could get, as I explained, I could get to these tabs and bend them up, or bend them back and down. There's going to be one at the bottom and one at the top that wraps all the way around the nut. Well, somewhat around the back of the nut. So you're going to have fun beating this side to get it to pop past these little metal tabs. As you're doing that, hit it back up forward, and then bend your tab a little bit more, and then go at it again from this side and try to see if it'll break free. Like I said, this little tool here, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's some kind of punch. It's a metal punch or something. Worked miracles. Anyway, once I got that bolt loose, I got it knocked out completely. That's when I went in and I pushed these tabs all the way down and all the way up while I had access to it. You're going to need a 17-inch box wrench. Okay, and I'm going to have to use this when I go to put it back on. Now, when you go to put it back on, well, let me go around. When you go to put it back on, your new control arm, this part here is going to be loose. This part right here is going to be loose. Do not tighten it. If you tighten this, then you can't push down on this end to give you the room you need here to get your box end wrench in there to hold the bolt, well, the nut, while you turn your bolt. So basically, you want it to go down as far as it can go so you can get in there and access your nut. While you feed your bolt through, you can hold it with a box end wrench and do it the same way. Then afterwards, then you can put your sway bar link back on, tighten your adjustment bolt in the back on your rear bushing and everything, because that'll already be tight. Okay, that was fun. It was a lot of fun, but I'm almost there. All I have to do is go to Mazda, because no parts store has this bolt right here, the ones that I cut. So I have to go to Mazda, get those two bolts. I already have all my seals, my new seals in my transmission. I have my new clutches installed, stage 2. That was a whole nother story. It's another thing. Your clutch slave cylinder right here. If you do get yours from AutoZone, remember that you will need the pin that sticks out and engages your clutch. The new one will not come with it, so do not let them take your old one and you do not get that pin out of there. If you do, it's $16 at Mazda, or if you want to go scouring junkyards, you might be able to find one out there. But it's not a hard job. It was not hard. It was just very tedious because everything in my car is concreted. Just take your time. Everything will come apart fairly easy, especially if you have a grinder. I'm just making people aware of how easy it is. I mean, if you don't have concrete in your car, it's pretty easy to get it done. If you do have concrete, or you ran through a lot of gook, you have a lot of gook and build up on your bolts and nuts and everything, there's a good possibility you're going to bend those tabs that I was showing you, and you're going to have to cut the bolt. There's no other way around it, because even if you try to put a box end wrench on the end of the nut, you can't get it on the nut far enough to actually get a grab on the nut, because of those tabs are in the way. I mean, it only leaves you about 1 millimeter of the end of the nut sticking out. So Even trying to get a wrench on the end of the nut with the tabs in the way is impossible, because all it wants to do is strip the end of your nut. As you can see here, I mean, it was just trying to strip the end of the nut when I could barely get this wrench. I mean, you can only get the wrench but that far onto the nut, so you're not holding anything. But take your time. I'm hoping this helps others. You will need to order the new lower control arms. If you need, there's my other old one. And actually, this I can't reuse because my Allen wrench part is stripped out, so it won't grab because it got concrete in that part. No, on this end, I'm sorry, on this end it's stripped. This end was facing across the car, so therefore the concrete didn't go into the hole. This one was facing the front of the car, so the concrete was just going straight in there whenever they ran through it. I bought this set of control arms from eBay for $80 with free shipping. They come with the bushings, they come with everything except for the bolts. You do not get the bolts, but they come with the ball joint. They come with the new bushings, but the rear bushing assembly and everything's on here. They just do not come with any replacement bolts. So if you have a good feeling that you have a lot of goop on your bolts and you're gonna have to cut it, you might want to go to Mazda before you even start this job and get the bolts that you're gonna need for what I'm guessing is the, let me see here, I call it the pivot bushing, because it's the one that actually pivots when the car moves. But whatever it is actually called, I'd get 2 of these bolts before I even started, because if I'd have done that already, my car would be finished today. Well, no, I'm still waiting for my new rotors to come in. And my uncle played gorilla on this axle nut, so I had to cut the whole lip around here off to get it to back off. That was fun with my little Dremel tool. Something else everybody should invest in, a Dremel tool. But I'm waiting for my axle nut, and I'm also waiting for my rotors. I already have my gear all, and I have my new brake pads sitting in the car waiting for me. That's another thing, fellas. I know when you do a clutch job, you're more than likely going to want to, and I've seen DJ's video, DJ Devin. He's on YouTube. You should check him out. He's got a lot. I mean, he's turned pretty much every bolt in his car since he's got it, so he knows a lot. People always want to clean up their parts when they take them out. Like me, for instance, I want to clean up my transmission housing, knock out the old oil and everything, to make sure that when this thing is on the road, I can spot any leaks from my transmission from anywhere. Now the problem is, when you do wash the transmission, your axle holes are wide open. Okay, you're going to get water and cleaner down in those axle holes. That's fine. It's okay. It's not going to hurt anything as long as you don't do it and then leave it sitting for 6 months. Okay, but what you're going to want to do is, once you stab your transmission back in and you get it all bolted back up and everything, you're going to want to pull your drain plug and re-drain your transmission. You would not believe the milky oil that came out of this transmission when I re-drained it, to, you know, after cleaning it and re-stabbing it with the new clutch and everything in it. Just make sure you do that. If you do clean your transmission, make sure you drain it again before you add your new fluids, because you're not gonna like the results if you do have water in your transmission and you add that new fluid to it. It's gonna start eating your parts up slowly but surely. So just make sure you do that. Let's see. Oh yeah. Wish me luck on this one. That's the pilot bearing that came with my new XTD clutch setup. And when I got my flywheel turned, I actually forgot to ask him to remove it, so he did remove it and he reinstalled my old bearing. Then when I got home, I was going to actually tap it back out and press in my new one, and I forgot to do so, and I put it in. Oh, something else I want to tell you while we're on the subject. Alright, strap. This little strap saved my life. Fence post saved my life, and I'll show you why. Let me set it up real quick. This is my transmission device. What you do, you wrap your strap around your transmission right here, okay? Right around this part, and of course the motor mount's not here. I mean the transmission mount's not here. You wrap it around the spot right here, and it keeps it perfectly level. Perfect. Okay? Then what you do, you wrap your strap around this pole about 32 times. No, not that many, but about 6 or 7 times. You grab your strap with your hand, hold it tight, and twist. Twist your pole on the radiator support, and make sure it does not slip off of this strut tower support. Okay? But you turn it. As you turn it, your transmission will come up. These transmissions are extremely light. This transmission couldn't weigh no more than probably 70-80 pounds with no fluid in it. I literally can pick this transmission up at the bell housing and lift it up off the ground and walk with it with one hand. Yeah, I mean, with one hand I'm kind of straining a little bit, but you can hold that transmission with one hand. But if you wrap that strap around your transmission right here and then tie it up at the top, or I had my little hook, so I just hooked my hook to itself like so, and then wrap the other end of your strap around here about 5, 6, 7 times, and then use the torque of the pipe, your transmission will lift, and it will lift perfectly level. Now you're going to have to keep your pipe about this angle so you're as close to the top of your transmission as you can get, and where your center, where the actual strap is center, the best you can get it with your transmission. Just keep an eye out on this part. Don't worry about it as much on that part, because you have a long way to go before that falls off, but keep an eye on this part. It will want to turn and roll off of this part, and you will damage your cruise control box, or you'll hurt yourself really bad. Now I did have the transmission, I used 2 jacks and a cinder block, so I had the transmission up about 85 to 90% of the way up to where it bolts to my motor. So I basically just use this pipe to kind of simplify the stabbing process, if you want to call it. I mean, where it would help me out so I could use one hand to stab while I use the other hand to grab and let it down, pick it up, and so forth. And it made it really easy. I mean, the hardest part of the transmission job is getting it stabbed back in and aligned so you can start your bolts. Okay? But with this pipe little setup, it was a breeze. I did it all by myself. It was very easy. I had my right hand was completely free to move the transmission around, while my left hand, all I was trying to do was just hold pressure on the straps so they wouldn't slide and let my transmission back down. And even if they would have slid, my transmission wouldn't have slammed on the ground. It would have just kind of rolled down to the ground slowly. So that's pretty much all I can think of right now. Also, if DJ watches this, I don't understand why you had to remove your intake manifold or that rear motor mount back there. I don't understand. I mean, I guess mine's different, because I had no problems getting to my starter bolts whatsoever. Once I took that bracket, now there is a bracket that holds your intake manifold. It goes from your intake manifold down to your engine block. Once I took that off, the starter slid right back. Now if I wouldn't have removed that, yeah, of course the starter would have hit it and I wouldn't have been able to get it out of the transmission housing. The rear motor mount, there's 2 bolts on the other side that actually go into the transmission through the motor mount. once you remove those, that motor mount's free and clear. I mean, there's nothing else holding the transmission at all. It was fun. It was a blast. I'm glad it's over with. Well, it's almost over with. There's my axles, and I actually have this axle here. As one of the boots was tore. Yep, right there. Well, no, it's not tore. I know one of the boots was tore. Maybe it fixed itself. Huh. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yep. So I'm just going to drive on this axle for a while before my wife divorces me from buying all these parts. But yeah, that shouldn't hurt it. I mean, that far away. If it was ripped right here, I'd be a little bit more concerned. But being that's way down here by the shaft, it's not that big of a deal. I hadn't had any clicking or anything when I'm turning or going. But just make sure that no matter what job you do in your car, on your Mazda 626, that you see what kind of goop and gook you have on your nuts and bolts, because throughout the process of doing one job, I guarantee you, if yours has concrete like this on your car, which I have way more I could chip out and chisel out, I guarantee you will be buying way more parts than just a clutch. Ha. But I hope this helps you out. Take your time, be safe. Hope my little tips and tricks and everything else kind of helped you out. It's Mike signing off.